Hello and welcome to the Online School's very first podcast. I'm Carl and I handle the academics, the content development and the project development of the Online School.
And I'm Tudor and I look after fundraising, ops management and partnerships development.
So we're here today to discuss our journey, what made us think to start building an online school, how it's been going, and what our vision is for the project as a whole. So to start with, Tudor, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into education, how did you start building an online school?
Well, funny on this one, because I never really saw myself being in education, and you know this very well because I talk about it a lot. Although I spent the last 10 years of my life in education, it was never really my dream until it kind of became this. So yeah, essentially after I finished university, I just knew that I wanted to start a business, but I didn't really know what that business would be. So it kind of happened. I just jumped at the first opportunity that I had. Met this guy from China that I was renting a room from in Birmingham at the time, and he could not register a company in the UK because of his visa situation. So he suggested this to me, and as it happened, it was an education company that he wanted to start, specifically an education consultancy, bringing students from China, placing them in universities in the UK. And I said, look, I'll register the company. I want a 10% cut of everything that you're doing, and I don't want to do anything, right? So we started this, and I think it was about a month and a half in. I set up the bank accounts, registered the company, all this, but still didn't want anything to do with it. And then I just checked the bank account at some point, and there was like over 20K in there. And then I went to this guy and I said, dude, did we just make some money? How did this happen? And he was like, oh, this business, lots of money. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. So tell me more about it, right? And then we actually got into it, and he said that, look, I could really use your help. His English wasn't very up to scratch at the time, so I said, okay, fine. I'm going to talk to all these universities. I'm going to build some partnerships. We should, maybe have referral partners in China and so on. Anyway. Long story short, that kind of 2 years in, that business became many different businesses. So we started with a consultancy, and then we developed a range of services to respond to the need of the Chinese students that were relocating to the UK. So we were renting apartments for them, we were doing airport transfers, and I think in kind of like the last phases, we even started selling cars. So that it built really nicely. It took us all around China, and I really loved it. But I can't say that I did it for the love of education necessarily. Okay. At the time. It was more, this is an amazing opportunity, and it kind of just picked up. So after that, I ended up actually moving to China to pursue another business that did not work. And after China, I spent about a year down in Xiamen, Fujian province. Then I went to Romania with a cosmetics business. That didn't go very well. And then I ended up in Dubai with yet another venture, which also did not go very well. And then eventually I ended up working for an education company, because I kind of went back to basics and I said, okay, what do I really know? So I said, okay, I've done education. I had a moderately successful business in the space, so I'm going to do this again. And then I started getting more interested in it, and it also got me thinking about my own education and kind of where the gaps were. You look like you were going to ask me something.
I was going to ask you something, but then I was going to let you flow instead.
Yeah, go on.
That's when you met me, right?
Yes.
And that's when
interest
in education peaked again.
No, not necessarily. If you remember, I thought you were a great pain.
I wasn't the easiest person.
So I was your boss at the time, and yeah, you were one of the difficult cases until
unionizing. That's what I was saying.
Yes. Well, as you know, they used to be illegal. So, well, how did we get here? So essentially. you kind of helped me conceptualize this idea probably as much as I helped you. But if I really think about how we started, it's kind of I jumped on your bandwagon, with you saying that education has to be different, and that's actually what got me thinking about my own education. And I was thinking, my God, I wasted so many years of my life, and by the end of it, I never really identified what I really want to do with my life, right? So I kind of just knew that I want to go into business and make lots and lots of money, but that's is not enough. And I think I would have benefited more from having identified what I really like and what I'm really good at a much younger age.
Yeah, I think that comes to one of the core problems I think that we'll end up discussing about education. But just to give you an idea about, obviously know this story well about how I got into education. I had exactly the same thing that you did. You said, I didn't think education was ever going to be a career that I went into. And despite, going through the educational system and having it be a really big part of my life, where I sort of end up going to Oxford and education, it's all everyone talks about. I still didn't think at the end of that journey that I'd end up getting involved in education as a sector. And I think that especially kind of school-age education, I didn't really see the value in it. We've talked about this before, that when I was doing things like selecting GCSEs, I selected things that I thought would be fun, so like music and drama, but I always knew I was kind of good at science and maths.
Well, that's a good way of doing it, right?
Yeah. I guess when I look back at it, it was a great decision, right? Because drama is a lot of what gave me my confidence. I've always loved music. So perhaps I thought these were going to be softer subjects and I'd have an easier time, but also they were things I genuinely enjoyed. Like I was always in the school play already, so like doing drama felt like a sensible choice to me. But then I pick my A-levels and I go, well, I'm good at science and maths, so I may as well just do science and maths. And I'm not selecting it for anything massively aspirational. I'm just kind of thinking, I'm good at this and I'll just do what I'm good at. And it's only when I meet a teacher that kind of believes in me that says, maybe you should try something like Oxford and Cambridge. And then I go and have this amazing experience at Oxford. And I think for the first time, I start to realize what I think is a good educational system. I start to look at it and go, okay, these people are trying to teach me how to teach myself. They're trying to help me learn how I learn. And I get to the end of that, though, and I still am convinced that is not what high school or school age sort of education is about. And my friends are telling me you should become a teacher, you'll love it, you've been tutoring all this time, and I'm like, absolutely not. So it's boring, it's a dinosaur, it's a career that I don't want to be involved in. And then I decide to become an auditor.
That's yeah. You should have actually went up the ladder. But that's actually how I was thinking about education as well. Like, why would I go into education? Everyone is broke, right? And I want to make money, so this is clearly not a fit for me. And also, I took issue with my own education. Kind of, although I always did well in school, right? So I kind of finished high school with top grades in Romania, but for some reason I just hated education. I just had such a high resistance to being taught stuff, and I always thought like, this is useless. It's not going to help me in life, right? Even though we were spending 6 to 7 hours in school every day, which I thought it was insane. I still think it's insane. And
I mean, well, we've seen it in what we do that it perhaps doesn't have to be quite that long, and you lose the sort of engagement factor. But what actually ultimately got me into education was, one, realizing that auditing was a worse job or more boring than I'd actually anticipated. And two, a bit of a fluke of coming out here to Dubai. Anna, my now wife, she moved out here, and I thought, okay, I'll do something that I know how to do. I knew there was tuition companies out here. I came in and I did it, and that's obviously where I met you, and caused you a lot of trouble. And
you still do.
And so then I think, is this for me? I'm thinking probably a year, maybe 2 years. And I get asked to homeschool. It was probably you that actually asked me and said, right, we've got this student, homeschool them. And I think, oh wow, that's quite an open-ended ask. But I get really stuck in. It's really interesting being able to just sort of map this project out in such a big way. And I remember the parent that we had, she wanted an incredibly detailed scheme of work, and we spent hours and hours building this, and it was so interesting. And then when I moved up to management, thanks to you, that was the big thing that I kept thinking about. Like, homeschooling is interesting, but it's quite a varied output when we're using kind of tutors who are kind of new. And so we did all these partnerships. We tried working with other online schools, and it just never quite worked. And then we thought, then that was really my first thought of, should we just be the ones doing this? And I think that's probably where we started to have conversations then. And then when you said, oh, I think we can fund this, then I thought, oh wow, that was not.
I had no idea how I was going to do it.
No, you pulled it off.
But yes, well, you were one of my first investors, right? Because if you remember, I convinced you to invest money in the first MVP, and then I convinced you. You know, you remember how you were at the time. So I said, look, I can get more people behind this if I manage to get you involved. Just a quick point on management. I was just thinking, why did I decide to essentially promote you at the time? And you were such an absolute pain to deal with, because you were very opinionated, and you had you had your own ideas about how things are done.
Still am.
Yes, which is it's a very good thing. But essentially, my solution at the time was, well, we can't get rid of him because he's a brilliant tutor. So how do we deal with this problem? And well, give the guy a promotion. He's clearly clever, and by having to manage people himself, he will understand what I'm talking about, right? And he'll see the wider issues.
I think that is genuinely fair. I think you remember in those early days when we were talking about it, I did have this realization, and that's probably where we got closer, was when I started to see your side of it a little bit more, and I started to go, okay. But then I think it was us working together that actually ended up resolving some of those problems.
Absolutely.
So I think it was, I mean, a great partnership that's gone on to be even more than that now. But one of the things we both keep saying is we didn't want to be in education. We didn't think it was the career that we want to be in. And I want to kind of address that a little bit and have a think about what do you think the problems are with education? I always think about Ken Robinson talking about learning and education being two different things. And you were saying how you just seem to despise this education system, despite actually being quite good at it and achieving well. And you always seem to me to be quite a curious person, and you're very interested in things. What do you think of that? What are the problems with education?
Well, I think the problems are many, and my view on it could be quite controversial, because essentially, if it was up to me, just tear the whole system down. And this is because when I think and when I look at successful people around me, a lot of them actually dropped out of education, and they kind of found their calling on their own. They learn how to code, they learn how to just be entrepreneurs, essentially, and they carved their own piece of the pie, and they did it all on their own. So then I'm wondering, how did education help them, right? And if you talk to a lot of these people, and we have some of our advisors that are helping us build this project. They've achieved this immense success in their fields, reached 1.5-2 billion people, right, with their products, right? And they're not a product of their education, right? And then when you think of education, I think it is this incredibly important stepping stone in one's life. So you have your family when you're very young, and the way you're brought up, and the values that are instilled in you, and then the next really big part of your life is your education, and somehow you don't hear a lot of success stories that came from having an amazing education. I think there are a lot of people that kind of managed to get a stable life as a result of having been through the education system, but I don't see a lot of inspirational, super excited people that attribute their success to the education system. So then my question is why are we not making this huge part of of children's life more exciting
Yeah, well, I think you see this when you look at
and
like
useful?
Elon Musk or Zuckerberg, and you see a lot of these people dropping out of they make it, they achieve these amazing things, they end up in Stanford or Harvard, but actually when they start creating something and building something, they divert their attention on it. And I think I read this really interesting report actually the other day, I think it was in TechCrunch UK, and it was saying that people are modeling right now what AI will do and how that is, which jobs it's more likely to take away. And everyone's thinking, it's the number crunchers, it's the kind of the entry level jobs. And actually most people are saying it's middle management that's going to drop down. And at the minute, well, I think this is kind of what you're saying, that aspirationally education is basically getting you towards middle management. Like it wants you to get on the ladder, then get safe and be kind of happy in your job, but it's not making a ton of CEOs.
Yeah, so well, I remember when I was in education, well, when I was in school, I was always thinking, you know what, I'm gonna have my own business, because my parents had a business at a time, and that kind of inspired me, and I saw that they were living better than most of my. Well, I was living better than most of my peers because of what my parents were doing. So I said, I want a job like, that guy's mom or dad. I want to be like my parents. Well, they actually eventually ended up just at a crucial time in my development, messing up really, really badly with the business. So I was growing up with this dreams of getting a car when I was 18 and all this stuff, and then those dreams were crushed, and and it was very, very hard to adjust to that. But even that in itself was a lesson in business.
Yeah.
Is not only the upside that you see, right? You go through ups and downs. But anyway, I was thinking about, I will have my own business, I'll be an entrepreneur, and that will give me the success that I want. And then when I went to university, I said, oh, well, in Romania, we just want to wing it, right?
Yeah.
So maybe I'm thinking about this wrong, and I have to get a job. So I studied business management and marketing, and I was looking at marketing jobs at the time and thinking, okay, I'm just going to get into a career, I'm going to climb the ladder, and eventually I'm going to become some, I don't know, marketing director, something in some company, but I couldn't really think further than that. And every time I was talking about it, like, I just was not excited by it. And then I look back at people who kind of took that trajectory, and they may be very happy in what they're doing, and have their lives and stuff. But my God, I want so much more than that.
I think it's that ambition that's. Well, it's that ambition that drives you, right? It's that ambition, and just bringing it back to this idea of, what's wrong with the education system. That it seems to me that it kind of gets that, it kind of beats that out of children a little bit, because we start to tell people there's a right and a wrong, and I think when you are aspiring to put people sort of on the job ladder, there are kind of right and wrong ways of doing things, and you've got to go into a corporate scenario, and you've got to kind of do it this way, and this is the way they do it. And actually, that was my big problem when I became an auditor, was that I kept coming up with ideas and being like, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this? And they were like, absolutely not. We've always done it this way, and who are you just coming in the first year and trying to change it? But I think it's that kind of creativity that we're losing a little bit in schools, and you see it with kids. Like, kids will have a shot at anything, and I love working with the younger kids, and you see they'll ask crazy questions. They're not afraid to pull you when they think something's wrong. They're not afraid to question these sorts of things. Older kids, once you get close to A level, it's a lot more like them asking you, how do I do this? How do I get through this exam paper? Rather than them being like, what are people thinking about this thing? Is this actually true? And I think when I went to university, that was my first experience of sort of realizing even chemistry is not that black and white. And we did this thing. Remember when we were doing the branding early on? We were working with a branding agency and we were trying to figure out our logo. And we were going through this big branding exercise and we were trying to figure out, we were learning all this stuff about identities and what visions were and mission statements and all this kind of stuff. We did that exercise with all the car brands, and they came out. And then when they came with a pitch, they came out and did this. They showed us that when you Googled "why is school so," the top things that come up are like boring, depressing, long.
It's actually in our pitch deck
today. To this day. So thank you.
It's such a good point.
But yeah, and I think the thing we were most amazed by was that wasn't a piece of marketing. We went away and Googled it, and it really is what people are asking about education. So I think it comes back to this like learning versus education type thing. How do we make the system, which I think is what Ken Robinson refers to education. Education is the system of learning, and learning is the process of acquiring knowledge. Everyone loves to acquire new knowledge. Like the most watched things on social media are educational videos, not your traditional educational videos, but things where you learn something. But not everyone likes the system by which we learn. And I think that's what we're kind of trying to change here. So,
well, you see the success that we've had on social media and the engagement levels that we got by producing this sort of content.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sparking curiosity.
And that's it, right? What we've always talked about from the start is intellectual curiosity. And this is probably a good point to ask. We all have kind of inspiration and we all have role models that we aspire to be. And I've mentioned Ken Robinson. I love all of Ken Robinson's work and think it has framed a lot of what we're doing. But for me, like, I find people really inspirational who are just curious. So I like people like Louis Theroux frames how I question kids. His notorious silence. So he just will leave an awkward silence. He's happy to do it. And if I'm letting a student explain something to me and they've only half explained it, I'm just happy to wait. And you see then they'll try harder, and so he's informed me a lot. People who are really great at communicating complex ideas like Brian Cox, and we talked about this before, not Succession Brian Cox, but Professor Brian Cox. And
disappointed.
although he is an inspiration, but for different reasons.
Oh, for sure. I would do an impression. You know that I like to do this, but
maybe not Brian Cox, but Logan Roy, right? But and then I love this guy, Chris Donnelly, who he sort of critiques all of these big influencers telling you how your day should be and how you should be as an entrepreneur and how you should be as a startup. And as well as I do. Get up at 9, spend 5 hours doing all these things.
You don't get up at 9, you get up at 5. You get up at 5 in the morning, you meditate, you hit the gym right after.
I meant 9 the previous evening.
Right. Yeah, because sleep is already most successful people don't sleep.
But who do you find inspirational?
Well, that's actually a tricky one because I follow a lot of influential people, but I'm not necessarily listening to a lot of what they have to say. I kind of see bites of what that kind of catch my attention, and I like to look at success stories, right? Because it kind of validates the journey that we're going through, and looking at how Amazon started, or any of the other, a lot of the other big companies, they all went through these ups and downs periods, and then every time I look at something like that, I remind myself that this is fine. It's painful, but it's definitely part of the journey, and it'll make for a heck of a good story, right? But actually, a lot of the people that inspire me personally are these people that I mentioned earlier, that kind of without a lot of help, without necessarily a wealthy family, without a very strong education, because a lot of my friends actually dropped out. They managed to become successful, and they found what they enjoy doing and what they were good at, and they managed to to turn that into big business or big businesses, and then as a result it made them, I don't know, fulfilled, happy people, right? Which is kind of the point, right? I think I talk quite a bit about money. Is not it's not just about that. I think it's about time and being able to live your life without a lot of the stresses that you get from a job. Okay, you get a lot of stress from business, but if it's something that you actually enjoy doing, you enjoy problem solving, and you love what your business is doing, then you're more likely to actually rush out of bed in the morning being excited and going like, I'm going to solve this problem, and then it's going to be fine, and then I'm going to do this, that, and that, right?
Well, you're the money man, so I'd expect you to talk a lot about money. You have to. It's part of your job.
Yes, I know. Well, and good thing I enjoy. I enjoy talking about it, and because it's a lot of times it's an awkward topic to bring up, right? Like how do you pitch to someone, and especially that a lot of our investors are kind of not non-traditional, right? We have a few angel investors that kind of believed in us, but a lot of these people are friends as well, and well, some well, a lot of them actually became friends throughout the journey. But how do you open that conversation, and how do you not shy away from saying, here's this amazing idea, and I think you'll be good for 50, for 100K, and you have believe in us, and in what we're doing.
Well, especially when it was just an idea. Now we have something to show. It's a bit easier, but back then that was a real challenge. And especially since the idea has gone through so many evolutions as well.
Yeah, so I think in a way that was even easier. You remember at the beginning when we first started raising money, I think we set a target and we kind of hit it by week 2.
We got people excited pretty well. You could say whatever,
and that was because we could say whatever we wanted, basically, and it worked. And I'm even thinking at the moment that sometimes I get too well. We've seen so much during this time, right? Although I think we've achieved so much, and we've validated the idea, right? Launching in September, getting strong sales traction. But I think that I have a lot of the issues in the back of my mind, and I have to remind myself to not get stuck on those things that maybe didn't work, right? Because then you have, a well-versed business person understands that during the course of a business, you will have about 1 million ideas, and you will twitch them, and you will try some, you'll discard some, and then eventually you find something that works, and you build it further, right? But then if you go to an investor and you say, well, we tried doing this and it didn't quite work, the investor will be like, oh, it didn't quite work. How much money did you spend on that?
Well, that's a real big challenge, isn't it? And me and you have debated this endlessly. How do we remain honest when we're talking to investors, but also get the investment? That's the real trick. We don't want to sell anyone on something that we're not doing and go around the big tangent, or go off on a tangent of something that isn't quite what we're doing. And I know we've been pressured into making educational games, and we've been pressured, and we've always managed to hold strong on the vision, but it's tempting, right? When someone's saying, going, I'll give you the money if you do the educational game,
And you see that this would sell well, right? Because you can present something that's incredibly exciting, and I have to say I get excited by these things, because you remember I bring them to you and I go like, Carl, I spoke to this person and they think we should do this, and they are very likely to fund this, so we should
they have to pass my gauntlet of questions,
probably pivot, yes. but then you always bring the big vision into play. We need to make a product that actually helps children, right? Not
change the world.
Have a and then I go like yes, okay, but it just this actually got me thinking about how we actually got our first VC, right? Because the vision is so well. I think it's so big because we essentially want to build a complete schooling experience on the web, and we found a way to keep kids engaged after many studies and research and testing and so on. But it really takes someone with a slightly different vision to actually see what we're building here, right?
Yeah.
And that's why the first the lead investor still is today from the Web3 space.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting because we kind of struggled convincing more traditional investors to really get behind this at such an early stage, and it took someone who's kind of more adventurous and willing to try things to say like, yep, I think there is an issue with education. I take issue with my own education, and I want to see something different. And what you guys pitched is great. So,
But then that came with its own challenges, right? Because when we moved into the Web3 space, which I think was, I mean, that came from you. It was a genius move to get funding so early on. But then when we went into that space, that was where we got this pressure to kind of do something different, because we kept getting told education's just not cool. It's not. And for me, I mean, well, I'm sure it resonated with both of us quite well, because, well, that's what we both thought when we got into education. It's kind of the reason we're trying to change it.
But we're trying to make it cool, right?
We're trying to make it, yeah.
I mean, the content that we're making, the style of everything that we do is quite, well, is not quite, it's very different, right? From anything that's out there. And that's why it's hard to get people, especially from the traditional space, to see it, because it is so different. And a lot of people say, well, what's wrong with education? Or even if they agree there's something wrong with it, they think like, well, it's just the way it is, right? You won't change it overnight. You won't change it in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. This will take a long time. So, and investors want returns, right? So they want something quick.
Okay, so we found out that education wasn't cool. Neither of us thought it before we started it out. Getting investment was really difficult because people didn't see it. Why did we start it? Why would you say you started it, the online school?
Well, to be completely honest, I just saw a massive opportunity, right? So obviously we're both in the education space. I saw what parents were saying. I saw how we were working with kids on these very personalized programs, and then I did a bit of research on the space and found companies that are doing this successfully in other parts of the world. Not so many of them in Europe and on the British curriculum, right? So then I just thought this is going to be big, and then the more I thought about it, and the more we got down to it, I realized that yes, this is potentially huge, right? So there was that, and then also the fact that I really do take issue with the with the education system, and I think that we have too many young people that finish school, go into university, they do a degree that they have little to no interest in. It's just what their parents told them, what, I don't know, society told them, or what they kind of think that they want to do, but they're not really passionate about it. And then you've wasted a bunch of years in school, then you go and waste another 3 to 4 years in university because you just don't know what you're going to do. And so basically, I want to fix that. I want to build this, and I want kids that go to the online school, by the time they're through, to have identified their at least their core strengths, right, and also their passions, right? And that's why, right, we're aiming to give them such a wide range of things to choose from, so they can find that passion. right?
Yeah. Well, well, it would be unfair to say that that either of us started it without thinking this was a big opportunity. It's a lot of work. It's very, very hard to build a startup, and I think we both thought that it was an opportunity there. But thinking
Yeah,
back,
well, a lot harder than we originally thought, right?
Yeah.
And that, but it was an entrepreneur that said that if I knew how hard this would be, I would never have started it.
yeah, I saw
you-
that. Yeah, I can't
Do you
remember
remember
who
that?
it was.
But then and maybe we thought this at times, right?
Yeah.
But then you're kind of too far in, and you realize that you had 1,000 problems, but you've kind of fixed 759 of them. So you go like, well, it's hard, but we got this far, and so we need to see it through, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, much harder than.
But I think for me, like I got into it because I saw the power of what we were doing, and having been a teacher in the classroom and being able to engage students in what are often traditionally boring subjects. I studied chemistry. I'm super passionate about chemistry and science and maths, and often I would get kids from a tuition point of view who hated chemistry. Their parents were like, my son needs to do better in chemistry. I'm going to send them to a chemistry teacher. And they weren't happy about coming to see me. They're wasting an hour of their evening. And then for them to walk away feeling engaged and happy or inspired and be able to change people's perception of this, I thought was really powerful. But the way the sector is set up at the minute it is actually quite hard for a lot of people to access. And if you really trace my journey back, where did I start tutoring? Well, I started tutoring for charities. And I think with what we're building, we have this amazing opportunity to bring high quality education to all students in the world, keep them engaged, keep them excited about what they're learning about. And sort of going back to what you said earlier about, we're not really training people to be, let's say, CEOs or business owners. We're sort of training them to be this kind of middle management. We have some big problems that the world is going to face over, well, forever. So we've got the pandemic, which just hit. We've got climate change. We've got big problems that need to be solved. And I think the only way we will get any solution to those problems is by inspiring young people to actually take them on. And I think with the sort of thing that we're doing, that's kind of our goal, is to help people find their element, think, okay, this is a challenge I want to take on, and I'm capable of taking on this challenge.
Yeah, well, that's a very noble way of looking at it. And yeah, I 100% get behind the idea that education has to be accessible, right? Because you mentioned that you started teaching for charities, right? And that with what we've developed, we can actually achieve this at scale. And you remember it was one of my things from the beginning as well. I think education should not be a privilege, and that you should be able to access this no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what your background is. Now, obviously, there are various logistical challenges behind that, because it's still dependent on hardware and internet. Our solution, but I'm sure we will find ways to solve it. We'll find partners. But my dream is that we can bring this in front of hundreds of millions of kids eventually. So then these kids will have no excuse to say that, oh well, I didn't have a good education, that's why I'm poor, or that's why I'm miserable, or that's why I did X, Y, Z, right? But to achieve that, we really need to keep developing and to keep dropping the price. More and more.
Well, just thinking about that, what do you think have been our kind of biggest challenges in building this? Because you're talking about this, we have to keep developing, we have to keep dropping the price, we have to keep finding new ways to reinvent ourselves to make sure that this works and we achieve our vision of reaching hundreds of millions of kids. What do you think have been the challenges that we've had so far and that we've managed to solve?
I think there were many. Some maybe we'll address in a later podcast. But yeah, I think we've had personal challenges, right?
Yeah.
Along the
For
way
sure.
of just adjusting to essentially really jumping full into startup. I was mentioning investment and investors earlier and saying that a lot of the people that actually believed in this early on were my friends and my family, and I feel a great responsibility towards them. So this kind of weighed heavy on my shoulders. So every time we kind of hit the roadblock, I would think, oh my God, what are we gonna do? I don't care about the money that I'm potentially going to lose, but I really worry, about their money. But I think it's a healthy approach. I don't think you can to just realize that you have a duty to your investors and shareholders, but you also can't let it weigh you down, right? So,
Yeah.
but it was my personal challenge, essentially, and then I think I think it was a lot, in how we started the platform and how we played with the different models, and kind of how we want to display things. It kind of seems like.
Yeah, I think that the UI UX was a big challenge, and I think we built that first MVP, and we were super unhappy with it. And every time we looked at it, we couldn't figure out why. And I think,
Well, every time I looked at it, I was just thinking, why are we just building? Why are we trying to build Coursera? Right?
yeah, the same thing everyone else has done.
Yes, but okay, we're building a Coursera interface, but we're putting traditional schooling and onto it. But then every other player that's trying to get into this market is using an off-the-shelf solution that kind of just looks the same, right? So
Yeah, and I think when we started to hone our approach a little bit on what we wanted to do, we started to realize that if we used an off-the-shelf solution, we'd always be limited. And it's actually one of the factors now when we talk to people and we talk to potential partners that they're quite impressed by that we built this from the ground up. But it wasn't easy getting there. I think realizing
No, it wasn't.
Also,
Especially without a tech background, right?
Yes.
This is something that I really struggle with because, and this is where it was hard to keep kind of the budgets under control.
Yeah.
Because, I just think that tech is like magic, right? So if I tell the devs that I want a button here and I want to drag and drop this
Yeah.
thing and I want this to spin and to whatever, I expect them to be able to do it in a reasonable budget because it's all a few lines of code and a bit of design, right? So that's one of the struggles to realize that, okay, we don't have an unlimited budget to build this.
Yeah.
So what are the things that we need just for the
Well, that was one of our big
MVP.
problems, wasn't it? That we worked with a set of developers with no designer, and we kind of thought naively that if we kept asking for things and we wanted to do this and we wanted to do that they would keep this budget under control. But they were just like, yeah, we can build that, and then they built
because
it.
they're a business.
but also at the same time, they built it and it didn't quite work the way we envisaged it because they're not the designers. And I think actually when we started working with the VC and they gave us a designer and said, you're going about this the wrong around, that was a big learning experience for us. And sort of working with that designer.
That was amazing. And I remember really enjoying those initial workshops, right? Just understanding that there is a process to this and you have to follow it. You have to find your user journey, your personas, etc. You have to do studies. You have to get a prototype in front of kids. That reassured me that, okay, we're not just gonna come up with something we think is gonna work. We're gonna ask a bunch of our friends, couple of kids, and then we're gonna build it, right? No, we're gonna think about this really systematically. So yeah, I think our designer has been amazing.
The design has
right?
been a really key part of like getting the vision out of our heads. And I think it was amazing that she managed to understand it so quickly and kind of get what we were doing, especially since it hadn't really been done before. It hadn't really been done in education. So when we're building the online school, so we've had these problems. We're thinking about UI UX design. We're sort of learning this tech journey. When we're developing the solution, what do you think you're thinking about? Because we do this together, right? So we speak to the developers together and we try to analyze, what features are going to be where are they going on the roadmap? What do you think your kind of guiding light is when you're deciding where things go?
Well, I think we're building this with the kids in mind, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be using it, and you remember this is where I kind of get the crazy ideas, right? Let's have avatars, let's let them customize it, let's do X, Y, Z, and then I kind of need to be toned down. But essentially, my guiding light is it has to be engaging.
Yeah.
And well, I always complain about the fact that it's not lightning fast just yet, right? We're playing with the staging environment.
Yeah.
But it needs to be super fast. It needs to be intuitive. It needs to be super engaging.
Well, I think that's what we did when we started building content, right? We said the social media strategy, for example, we said, let's test the content that we are going to ultimately end up putting on a platform. If we want this flipped classroom solution, if we want this independent learning, we have to keep students incredibly engaged. And I think we both kind of had a look at what was out there at the minute, and we just couldn't gel with it. And even as adults, we were thinking this would be hard to watch. And well, I think that's where we both actually downloaded TikTok for the first time and started playing and looking at what people did.
I think I remember telling you, I can't remember what we were looking. We were looking at the product demo or something, and I just said that I feel like I just want to kill myself when I when I look at this. Yeah, but so basically, we're trying to do something different.
Yeah, I think it's more important for us because we're not the way we're developing it. We're not actually saying there will always be a teacher leading this. That we're expecting the students to lead themselves at points. So we had to look at content that they are watching independently and choosing to watch. And I think to our surprise, we found, like EduTalk has had billions of views and Learn on TikTok has had billions of views. And then when we actually started watching this, we realized there's a lot of learning content on that. And not like learning content like Mythbusters, which is always fun. There is a lot of like maths learning content, like this guy I always send you that ends every maths video with how exciting is brilliant, and I watch him all the time, and he's got so many followers. And so you see this kind of school level education content, it's all there. And I think we said, all right, let's try our hand at it.
Yeah.
And I don't think we quite expected to get the reaction that we did and to get so many views so quickly.
Well, we're definitely hoping for it, but in the back of my mind, I kind of knew, just thinking about the younger me.
Yeah.
And that's where I wanted to do this thing with two G wagons. Pulling each other and demonstrating the friction.
I think we didn't quite believe that was going to work when we did it as well.
No, we didn't.
It was a bit of a test for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. But what's interesting is that you can find these hooks, right? Because basically you can apply education to everything, right?
Yeah.
You can do it on cars, right? And that's why I insisted that we did the cars videos that we. That we did, and they worked, right?
Yeah.
And there are probably a bunch of kids that really like cars that maybe came there for the G wagons or whatnot, and the sounds and the tour and blah, blah. But actually, they ended up learning a formula at the end, right? And that's something that you're able to visualize when you need it, and you go like, how does this actually work, right? So all of a sudden, friction is not that boring anymore. Or understanding G-force, right? When we put James in a race car and he was thrown around the track.
Terrified James in a race car.
Terrified. Well, I was very envious because I wish I was in his place.
That wouldn't have been as good if you were enjoying it. That was the fear on his face.
Experiencing the G's.
But I think, that was basically a big test of what we were doing, right? So we said, this is actually a really important part of what we're building, but also this can lead into longer form content, which we were thinking more, I guess, kind of like this, like podcast style or YouTuber style, so that kids could get hooked and then actually learn about the thing they wanted to learn about. So engaging is just a big part of what we're doing, I think. But I think the other thing that particularly you talk about, that we talk about quite a lot, is relevance. Sort of how relevant some of this content actually is, and getting kids to actually engage with people who are doing some of these things that we want them to do, this innovative career. So how do you think we're addressing relevance, let's say?
Yes, well, I think essentially we want kids that go through our school to identify what they want to do, right? And in order to do that, I think we need to inspire them, right? And we need to be able to help them make this connection between their education and something in the real world, right? But it's not as easy as just here's 5 options. You can be an astronaut, you can be a lawyer, you can be blah, blah, and this is what you need to study in order to get there, right? So I think it's a process, and the way we're addressing it is we are bringing influential people into the school to actually talk to the kids, right? So we're doing this course that was quite a challenge, and I'm sure it's going to continue being quite a challenge and a lot of fun with Ahmed Hafar, the famous voice of Dubai, right?
The voice of Dubai.
No. Okay, impressions later. Yeah, sorry, Ahmed. Yes, but even bringing him on, right? You may find that some kids actually want to be, I don't know, a voiceover actor, or aspire to do, or maybe they never thought that being a voiceover actor can actually lead to you being very successful, right?
Yeah.
So Hafari is under 30. He was actually in Forbes 30 under 30 this year, and okay, he's passionate his cars. He's got 2 Ferraris and stuff, but he made a really comfortable life for himself by doing what he really enjoys doing. And guess what? He dropped out of school, right? So we want kids to not drop out of school, because education is super valuable, super interesting, but we want them to see that this is actually relevant. You have to get through this, and we're helping you find what you're really good at. So I was saying we're bringing Hafar on, but we've got plans to bring all these other people, so all these entrepreneurs from various industries, where kids will be able to link what they're studying to, well, okay, this person is in, I don't know, real estate development, or he's building apps, or he's building sites, or he has a consulting business. So we want kids to see these people. Oh, he's an influencer, right? Because there's an interesting way of how do you get so popular? How do you find what's relevant, right? And if you see some of these people, the iterations of kind of personas that they go through is quite fascinating, right? So essentially, we want to have a wide range of everything that happens in the real world that could be potential careers, businesses, etc., ways of essentially making a life that would appeal to.
Well, I think that that these sort of partnerships have been a really important part of our journey, and helping students to understand better what's actually out there. Because I think, even go back to our big problem, right? Probably one of our big turning points was the UI UX thing that we talked about. I had no idea what a UI UX designer was. I didn't even know that was a job, And I think
I Googled it. I found out.
So we've learned this, we've discovered it, but presenting this to students is really interesting. I think there was actually a Guardian article that came out not long after we started working with the UI UX designer that said 75% of teachers in the UK don't know what a UI UX designer is, but it's one of the most popular careers that kids want to go into. And I could safely say at that point I was one of the 25%, because we'd figured it out. But had I not had that experience, I would never know. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is present all these options, even things we don't know about now, and just kind of say, this is interesting. We need the students to know about this so that they can make informed decisions about their life. But partnerships for me was a big success, and working with people like 8 Billion Ideas, who I see as a really inspirational company, and doing something really amazing, and them building content for us was really cool. And working with Pencil Spaces, this kind of Silicon Valley startup, then to build the virtual classroom inside our environment was a really big moment for us. What do you think are the successes we've had?
Yeah, so I think we talked about our TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So we actually never thought that we would get so many eyes on the channel, right? We've had nearly 50 million views,
Nearly 50 million.
and this was just us trying content out, not trying really hard to make it popular, right? And also very simple, kind of animated, fun content. So yes, I put that down as a success. And also the fact that we decided that we need to be revenue generating, for various reasons, but the main one being we really want proof of concept, right?
Yeah.
We want to prove that this way of educating works, right? So we started trading essentially in September. We opened sales in August, and we've built revenue really quickly, right?
Yeah.
So we've had sales since going on close to 300K, and that's a testament that people are asking for what we're doing, and this is working, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a success. The fact that actually leaders in the industry started talking to us, and kind of it caught the eye of both Web3 companies as well, and traditional education companies. So I think that that's really interesting, and now I'm just super excited to see it go live in January. Well, slightly terrified, but more than that, excited, because I just want to see people get onto it. I want them to less break it, whatever, but I want feedback. I want to see it come to life.
That was a really big moment for us when traditional educators came in and said, this is interesting, and started sort of taking us seriously and talking to us seriously.
Well, I think that's been happening for a while with you, right? Because you're quite vocal on LinkedIn, which I didn't quite crack yet, but people get behind the idea, right?
Well, there's always been this kind of like bated breath interest, and then I think when we started going to events and actually showing people what we built, that was a totally different reaction, I felt. So it felt like I could talk a big game at these events, and people were slightly thinking, but is anything going to come from this? And then when we started showing people, and that response was, what they're doing is actually good, and I've seen it now, that was really exciting. So I think probably we should talk about, we've gotten all the way this far and not actually talked that much about what the online school actually is and what it is that we're doing. We talked a little bit about that first MVP and how we kind of based that around LMS systems, learning management systems like Coursera and things like that. And then I think for me, it was the real turning point was when we started to develop a system that we thought would actually engage students, and that we thought would actually recreate a school-like experience, but not just by sort of copy pasting and putting it in a digital environment, but by augmenting it with technology. So just to kind of go through how we thought about that, we went a bit back to the drawing board, and we started talking to, it was an event I was speaking at, and I was speaking to some architects, and the architects, I showed them our first version of the platform, and I said, we're having this problem. We're not happy with the way this works and the way this functions. What do you actually think about when you build a school? And it was when they started separating it into these different learning experiences and saying, well, you need this. And I was talking about the campfire, the watering hole, and the cave. And probably I could talk about that all day, so maybe for another podcast. But the idea was that these have these different learning experiences, and that became a really core premise of our platform, where we said, instead of a school day being maths, then science, then English, it's going to be acquisition of knowledge in the morning. It's going to be, consolidating that knowledge later on. It's going to be peer-to-peer learning, and then it's going to be applying it in some way or another. So if you were to try to describe what the online school actually is and what it does, what would you say?
Well, I'm going to use your wording here. you often say that it's different things to different people, right?
Yeah.
Because it's such a big project. But I think essentially it's an all-in schooling experience, right? That essentially hooks you in based on your interests with short form content, and then recommends you longer form content, and helps you pick and choose your subjects, and then kind of sees you through that journey. But the thing that I'm most excited about is that it is fully flexible, right?
Yeah.
And that also is one of the first solutions out there for full-time schooling that you can actually access on a subscription model, right? So I like this idea that you no longer have to register for your school, is non-selective. Basically, you sign up with a subscription, and you have this vast database of content that you can consume at your own pace. So as a parent who wants to homeschool, you have everything you need there. You have the tests, you have the videos, and the best thing about it is that you get access to educators, right? So our mentors, the full-time team that's ready to jump into a lesson whenever there's a need for them. So I think this flexibility is really interesting, right? Because not all kids want to actually get up at 7 in the morning, and there's nothing wrong with getting up slightly later, and with structuring your learning a bit differently. There's nothing wrong with doing 2 hours in the morning and then going to play tennis or whatever you're interested in, and then just picking it up in the afternoon, right? So I think that's interesting, and this also gets me thinking about the bigger vision, right? Because our full vision is to be truly flexible, but also have this in-person element, right? So having these education centers all over the world, right?
Yeah.
So then, if you're a family that's based between, Dubai, London, and New York, you can find an online school center in each of these cities. You can be in Dubai, this week, and you can do 2 days online. You can go for 3 days into a center. The children can socialize with other kids, and it's all augmented by the platform, right? And then you can say, okay, next week I'm in London, but there's a really cool center in London as well. There's a chemistry lab, so I'm going to sign up for it. I'm going to meet the kids in London as well. And I think this also gives kids an idea of what the professional world really is like today, right? Because we talk to people from Malaysia, from Singapore, from the US, and we work with all of these people, right, on a daily basis. So why should kids not do the same? Why should they not have a project with a kid from Japan and a kid from the US, and they're all kind of working towards the same thing, even if they're on different timelines and stuff?
Well, the world changed and school didn't change with it, and I think this is kind of the problem that we're trying to solve. And it's flexible working is a thing. Flexible schooling should also be a thing. And I think there is a fear that this would make kids somehow less disciplined. But what I've always found that is if you actually give students ownership of their education, they mostly grab it with both hands. They think, okay, I have this is for me now. And they kind of understand its purpose a little bit more. And I think this is the door we want to kind of open and say, when we talk about flexibility, it's in terms of geographical location, it's in terms of time, but it's also in terms of content. It's in terms of what you want out of your education, and because it's very, very different for every student. And I think, ultimately, like it's basically a schooling hub, right? A fully managed schooling hub. It is, if you want it to be, it's fully teacher led, and it is this learning experience. And eventually, once we go hybrid, it would be in person and online. I think that's our kind of maximum vision. But it also could be for students in school somewhere else that want to pick up a little bit of extra content and understand, they like our content and they use it for revision. For others, it could be, well, we've built this community and they just want to do the peer-to-peer learning bit. They just want to communicate with people all over the world. There's no reason why they couldn't drop in our centers and make friends when they're on holiday or traveling. For other people, it could be, I just want to get test ready and I need to be test prep. For others, it could be, I need advice on university help. I need advice on careers. So I think what we're saying is we built this solution that is a fully managed teacher-led schooling solution, but we built it in such a way where all the individual pieces can be used to increase flexibility, increase relevance, increase access, and make sure that, you know, kids are really getting what they need out of their education. Okay, so we've been through this massive journey. We have gone through changes of mindset. We've gone through changes of understanding of what we're building. We set out to do something that would change the world and change the way education works. That's always been the goal. It remains the goal, but the way we're doing it has sort of been honed and evolved over time. If you could go back now to when we started this, what advice would you give yourself?
I would probably want to launch sooner, to be completely honest. Just not to have this kind of anxiety building up right as we're going into the, you know, August when we decided to start selling. I was, you know, part of me was quite worried, like, is this really going to work? Because we worked on it for such a long time. So we are convinced, right? We managed to, you know, convince our investors, our friends, our family, right? Everybody believes in it, right? But I wanted true validation. And again, going back to the money thing, you only get true validation when you have a parent who'll go, you know, love this, take my money, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I just wanted that moment, right? That they love it. They do love it. Right?
Yeah.
And
we were very perfectionist about it, right? We wanted it to do everything and we wanted it to be fully ready. And that was a big journey to actually go, well, we need an MVP.
But I think when you look back on anything, there's so many things that you would have done differently, right? So I think, you know, going back, even though I knew that when you build a product, you have to get to MVP essentially as cheaply as possible and as quickly as possible, launch it. It either dies or you pivot, or, you know, you either validate or you don't, right? But you find out early, so you don't end up wasting time and money. And that, so I would have probably done that a lot.
But I think we did have those validation experiences, and I think we sometimes forget that we tested the wireframes with kids and they absolutely loved it. They loved the fact that we were going for these 3D models, and that was a really validating experience. TikTok, huge validation. That content's going in the platform. We know this works. Testing the long form content was big validation, and then bootstrapping it and getting revenue from August was also validation. So I think it's because we didn't launch that app on this kind of the subscription model that we want, that feels like we've not validated, but we had these little validation steps all the way through it. And we've only really started development on this iteration in January. So
yes, no, I think we've done amazing. And also I tend to forget that we come from education background where we've seen, you know, families being educated in this way at a much higher price point, obviously. But you and I knew that this was going to work, right?
Yeah.
But I sometimes, you know, I tend to forget that. And again, you said I'm a money person, so
I want revenue.
Yeah. So, but now that's kind of, you know, it's out of the way, and we started being revenue generating, and we're growing month on month. So that's you know, is validation enough. Now I just want to launch the subscription based model and absolutely kill it, and then
well, that's exciting.
Then I'm happier.
The subscription. I think what you're thinking is we've had these little validation steps, so we know what we're building, but we've not had this big. The full app itself is, you know, it's fully functioning and people are buying subscription, and I feel nervous about launching that in January as well. But I think it's going to be exciting.
Well, we probably still won't have it for quite a while, because there's still going to be so many iterations, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So, and you know, I still see this as from this point onwards, until we get full product. I think it's going to be September of next year, right? All the areas of the platform open, everything working. But I think the full vision we'll only see what really became of this in another 2 years from now, right? So that will be many iterations later and many lessons
and
later.
look, even in this 1 year of building, how much we changed and adapted, and I think that's testament to hopefully our ability to actually do this, because we did change in the face of new information. And I think it's this fine balance between knowing when to stick to your idea and say, okay, the idea is great, and this is what I want to do, and then also knowing when to pivot. And one or the other is, either one is not good, right? So if you keep pivoting, you're never staying long enough to validate something disruptive. But if you also just stay on the track, and I think that's where the skill comes in. And I think the fact that we're working with clients, and the fact that they're loving what we're doing, and the fact that the industry is now getting interesting, now they can see a build of it, is testament to doing that right. For me, I think what I would go back and tell myself is, I get bogged down in the detail because it's a really big project and we've got all these different areas, and I get quite excited about it because, having worked with kids, I know how all these different areas are going to be interacted with. I know this experience is going to be unlike anything that's out there at the moment. But the problem is, when we go to an investor, and we've talked about this a lot, we can have a habit of being a bit scattergun, of being like, let's tell them everything and then find out what we latch onto. And what's funny is, having worked a lot in sales, I would never do that in a sale. Like, I would wait for them to tell me their problem, and then I would address their problem. And I think because we were new to this pitch, we didn't quite do it that way. And I think now we're getting a bit more experienced and a bit more used to it. That's something that we do really differently now. So we listen to them. And the great thing about it is, everyone knows about education as an industry. Everyone has an education. Everyone has an opinion on it. So we know that anyone we sit in front of, we can talk to about it, get them talking, figure out what their pain point is. And then, because what we're building is so big, we tell them how we're addressing that pain point. And that's been a much more effective strategy, I think. So I would go back and be like, don't get bogged down in the details. You guys are good at sales. It's the same thing.
Yeah, true.
So we talked a lot about having actually started working with students and doing this kind of bootstrap version of online learning and self-led learning through the virtual classroom. And we started to have really good feedback from parents. And one of the things that parents say to me quite a lot is around what you said earlier, which is this idea that school shouldn't take 7-8 hours. And we've had parents come to us and say, look, you've given my child their childhood back, because they're now no longer too tired to keep skipping karate at the end of the day, which is something that they really love. And they socialize with all their friends here. But, when they've done a whole day of school, they just don't feel like it. And half the time they say no. And so what I always think is really interesting is flipping this idea of the social problem on its head, because at least in my experience, and definitely validated in what we're doing since August, kids are more likely to go out and socialize and do these sort of more sports or social activities if their school day hasn't been quite so intense. And what we're doing is covering that same content. We're getting them just as prepared, or even better, in a much shorter space of time.
Yep.
What do you think about parent feedback?
I think this thing about around socializing is an interesting one, right? Because it's a question that we get. Well, it's a question that we get from everyone.
Yeah.
How are kids going to socialize? And we think there's a very simple answer to it, but I don't think it's immediately obvious, right?
Yeah.
The fact that because this is so flexible, and also is a lot more condensed, right? So we always talked about, and that's the reason why we worked with senior examiners in developing the lesson content. We wanted to squeeze the juice from it, right?
Yeah.
So you do the program, and you can get max grades, right? By just doing what's on the platform, and not just that, you can go on a tangent and explore a variety of content. But essentially, because we're so flexible and the program is so condensed, the kids have a lot more time to do what they want with their day, and especially in Dubai, where there's so many activities available and so many clubs. I think parents really start to see it once they start a program, and they see it because they see it in their kids. They're less tired, and they're really excited. And we've had kids, if you remember, that went around and told their friends, and then their friends wanted to join as well because they said, my school is so cool. I'm doing this and that and that, and everything has an entrepreneurship angle, and I love my teachers. And
well, it's not just the time, is it? I mean, that course that you're thinking about there, building out that entrepreneurship program and actually making maths be maths for business and making English be English for persuasive writing and things like that. And this was for a 12-year-old. This student felt like they were treading water in school, and now this really excited. They're about to do our Shark Tank pitch in the new year, which will be a lot of fun. And they're telling their friends about it because they're learning all those same skills that you're learning in school, but they're doing it in something they're really passionate about. So yeah, I'm excited about developing more things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So thinking about advice and advice you would give yourself, if you were to go back and think about the journey you've been through in your whole life, what would you tell kind of school age you? What would you tell 15-year-old self? What bit of advice would you give?
Buy Bitcoin.
I think good piece of advice.
I think that was more for when I was in university. I think going back to 15, I would just tell myself to stop stressing out, about school and about results, and also stop pushing back so much, I suppose, because it didn't really get me anything other than get me suspended constantly. The fact that I was protesting so much, saying this, why do I need to learn this whatever particular subject, right? Because I don't like it, I don't have an interest in it, and it's just part of my curriculum. I will never like it, and I still don't see how that particular subject helped me. It was something specific for Romania, I think it was civil education.
PSHE and
it was just complete nonsense, right? So I would tell myself to stop stressing out. I would tell myself that I have all the time in the world to achieve everything that I want to achieve, and that it's all out there. And I would tell myself to just really think about what I really enjoy doing, other than riding bikes, motorcycles, skiing, and doing a range of extreme sports that, I actually did ski as a pro back in Romania, but unfortunately had an accident and kind of had to stop, and also was never the best, right? I was never in the top three. I think my best result was like 5th or 6th in the country, and then
that's pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's all my father told me, because I remember he used to tell me, if you don't get on the podium this year, you should stop doing this. My father was actually a professional rower, so he rowed for Romania in the I don't know, world championship, whatever, and he all the European championships and so on. Then he got an injury and had to stop. But yeah, he was telling me only the best make it, and maybe even the ones that get on the podium in Romania, they're still not going to make it, because you need to ski all the time, right? And you're only skiing in the winter. But anyway,
go to Japan, ski in the summer.
The kids that had a lot more funding and had schools that actually allowed them to do it were just going and skiing on an iceberg. So yeah, but anyway, I think I was really stressed in school, and then when I got to university, I just kind of got stuck on this idea that I need to pursue a career. But I never really allowed myself the freedom to be creative and to say, okay, you have time, right? Think really well what it is that you want to do, because you're going to have to do it for a very long time from now on, right? And I think I kind of just winged it in the end, and business is actually what I enjoy doing and what I'm hopefully good at. So yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I think for me, I would tell myself to try everything. I think to explore more and not narrow my view of the world, because I did throughout my education, and the British education is kind of set up like this to sort of narrow you down. You have this broad GCSEs. Now, I said earlier that I did drama, I did music, I was really creative in the way I thought, and then I just did pure science and maths. And I would have liked to have kept some of those elements going. And then when I went to university, this became a big part of my identity. But I actually I would go back and I would tell myself to just keep that sort of wide view of the world open and keep a broad knowledge base, which I think I try to do now as an adult. But yeah, that would be kind of my advice. So thank you very much for sitting with me for so long and discussing our entire journey. This has been really interesting, and hopefully people have found sort of little bits of nuggets of wisdom in it. We're planning on doing this a lot more, so this is the first of many. So,
well, we have these conversations over and over in the office, and we're actually stuck in the same room for 10 to 12 hours a day. So, I think it would be interesting to share this, because it is a very interesting and insightful journey.
Yeah. So, thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll be back soon.
Cheers, everyone.
Cool.
Hey.
Yeah. Good. Well done.
Not bad.
Yeah.